Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of It Depends with Sanjeev and Eli. And today's guest is a special guest. He is a fellow Pluralsight author. He is a friend that I've known for many, many years. Well, boy, Nigel, we're going to date ourselves. What was it? The Hitachi Data Systems Influencer Day 2013-ish or something.
I feel like it was longer ago than that, but I'll take your word on it. That feels about right.
It is my great pleasure to welcome Nigel Poulton to the show. Nigel, it's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Honestly, I'm excited to be here. Like I said on the preamble for the call, there's a huge soccer match going on the TV in the other room over there, but I am stoked to be here instead.
Well, folks, if you hear him shout or scream, that means someone scored a goal, probably Real Madrid, hopefully Real Madrid.
Yeah.
And which teams are playing?
Chelsea and Real Madrid. It's in Spain, so it's a Champions League quarter-final. Chelsea are winning this one 1-0, but it's 3-2 overall. It's on a knife edge, but it's not as cool as being with you guys, promise.
We also have Anna Bellick that's on the show with us today. Anna, it's always great to have you, so welcome.
Thank you. And I am a big Nigel fan, so this will be fun.
Oh, you are? Please tell us more.
No, don't.
Yeah, Nigel won't know this. I'm kind of like a secret fangirl. But, so I joined Gartner in 2015, and my role was kind of interesting in that I had to work on primary storage, which I knew nothing about at the time. So I had to very quickly learn what in the world a SAN was, and it turns out if you type into Google storage words and you're looking for educational content, Nigel was very prominently featured at the top of those hit lists and was actually incredibly helpful content. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. That's really cool. So you know what? I wrote a book years ago it was called Data Storage Networking. And it was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life because I did it while I had a day job as well. In fact, maybe we talk about stuff like this later, but I'd saved one of the most boring chapters till the end of the writing process. And on Christmas Day over here in the UK, this probably sounds quite bad, as my wife was kind of tidying up all the mess from everything that had gone on, kids opening gifts and things all day. I was sat on the laptop trying to bash out, I think it was the last chapter of the book on incremental backups and stuff like that is just, look, I know in the grand scheme of things, it's not super bad, but it was a dark day in my own particular life. So I'm glad that somebody appreciated probably the book, or at least some of the content that maybe came from that.
That's awesome. So speaking of storage, maybe that's a good place to start. You are not doing you're not covering storage anymore, right? You're laser focused on containers and Kubernetes, correct?
Yeah, so it's interesting actually. I used to consider myself, I never considered myself an expert at anything, right? But I lived and breathed storage for a very long time and I was passionate about it and I really enjoyed it. Eli. So, but I would say today, I know almost hardly anything, at least about the proper hardware infrastructure side of things like that. I know a little bit about what goes on with containers and Kubernetes and storage, of course. But years ago, right, so I should know the year, but I can't remember. Calvin Zito from HPE had me over at an HPE Discover event. And I think the same week was the first ever DockerCon event. And I was just getting into Docker and containers at the time. And I said to Calvin, and look, Calvin had flown me over there and everything. And I was participating in the event and I was very grateful to be there. But I said, hey, Calvin, look, I got to just level with you. I would much rather be at DockerCon right now. And I actually went away from that day and was like, you know what, if I do feel like that, because I'd done storage for a while and as much as I loved it, I felt like something was about to happen with containers. Probably a lot of us felt with the early days of VMware, you could see a sea change or something on the horizon. And I went away into my hotel room that night and I was like, actually, if I would really rather be at DockerCon, I need to make sure I am at the next one. And that was a real pivotal moment in my career. And listen, don't get me wrong, I still love storage and all the storage people that are out there and stuff like that. It's just, it isn't what I do day to day anymore.
Yeah, I totally get it. Something similar happened with me when VMware came out and then when AWS came out. They were both pivotal moments. But speaking of books, so you have published many books. The one that I'm familiar with is the Kubernetes book. I want you to tell us a little bit about it. But you have a new one that just came out, right? It's about the certification, smash the cert, something?
Yeah, so I've got some props for anybody that's watching on the video, right? So if I can get this in the camera, this is the new book, the KCNA book. And I think there is a subtitle, if you look at it on Amazon or something, Smash the KCNA exam. So the KCNA exam is like the entry-level CNCF exam. So if you want to start like a path of Kubernetes-related certifications, the KCNA is like the entry-level one, like the really easy one. So what happened was, I think they announced it at KubeCon last year, in about November, that they were going to be releasing this exam. And I thought, you know what, if I can get there and be the first to write a book for that exam, that would be something pretty cool. So I didn't work Christmas Day last year, but I did work really, really hard over the whole kind of sort of Western holiday period time to get this book out hot off the press. And it's a good book, don't get me wrong, but probably I shouldn't say this, right? I'm not a massive fan of certifications. But I do know that they play a big role in a lot of people's lives and a lot of people's careers. And there are people out there starting in their careers or wanting to make maybe a switch from storage or networking or something into containers. And they want some certifications behind their name so that when they give a resume over or something, they can say, hey, look, I know the basics of this. So, worked on that book. But I've written a bunch of books over time. The ones I do now I self-publish. The data storage one I didn't self-publish, and those are like extremely different experiences.
Yes.
And I think the products that come out of them at the end are extremely different as well. But yeah, look, I don't want to hog the mic. I'll talk about it all day if you want, but you have to cut me off probably sometime.
Wait, I have to ask actually.
By the way, I have a question on that, because I saw you had posted something about not going with a big name publisher, I think on LinkedIn. So
yeah,
advice you give?
Yeah, so the first book that I wrote was with a publisher, a major technology publisher, and I just felt like if anybody that hasn't written a book out there, the amount of effort that goes into writing a book, certainly on something that's technology related, which look is not. Well, I don't know. I've never written like a sci-fi or a fantasy book or anything, but I imagine writing Harry Potter is a lot more fun than writing a Kubernetes book. Look, Kubernetes is awesome, but it's not that awesome, right? So there's a lot of work goes into it. And anyway, when I handed over that data storage networking book, I really felt like it was a huge part of my life had gone into it. And then it almost wasn't my book. It was the publisher's book after that. Whereas publishing on my own, I've got like zero money for marketing budget or anything like that. So it's always a big challenge going up against the major publication houses. But I do feel like the product that I put out there is mine. And then like with the Kubernetes book and Quick Start Kubernetes, they're updated every year. I've got the freedom to do that. People will ping me and say, hey, I'm not quite sure about something that you said in whatever chapter. I've read it and I still can't figure it out. So I can go back to it immediately almost and say, I need to clear this up a little bit, and then I can just push a newer version. So there's so much more freedom. But I think what I'd said was that the Kubernetes book at the time, like on Amazon at least, it has over 700 ratings now, which is the highest of any book out there. And if you search Kubernetes on Amazon, it regularly shows up as first or second below the books that are like paid advertising. And I think what I was saying was that like as an indie publisher like me, it's really hard to go against an O'Reilly or whoever who can put a lot of marketing behind it and paid adverts on Amazon and stuff. I can't do that. But I'm super proud of like in a humble way. I look, you know me, Eli, that I'm not like, I don't brag or anything like that. I'd just be setting myself up for a failure in the future if I did. But it is very hard. But it's very rewarding as well when people come back to you afterwards and say, hey, look, like they might bump into me at KubeCon or something. Hey, I've read one of your books or something really amazing. Thanks so much. That's like, it makes all of the hard work just worthwhile when that happens. And hey, Anna, were you going to say something before?
Yeah, Anna.
I was going to ask you, what was the most dreadful chapter to write of the Kubernetes book?
Well, so I'll give you two answers, and you may not like the answer, Anna, actually, knowing where you work.
No.
So security.
Yeah. So what happened was, so there's two security chapters in the book, and I didn't write them. They're the only two chapters of the book that I didn't write. So I got approached by the guy who wrote them for me at either a DockerCon or a KubeCon event in the past, and he said, hey, I'd love to collaborate with you on writing chapters in the book. And I have people come and approach me about things like that all the time. And I've always just said to everybody, no. And it's easy over email or LinkedIn DM or whatever. Yeah, thanks for the offer. I work better alone because, I can put it down. I can pick it up and finish it whenever I feel like. But this guy was so nice to me, Pushkar. So I met him in person. He was really nice. I said, okay, go on then. I'll let you write the 2 security chapters because I wanted some security content in there because security is becoming really, really important.
Yeah.
But I'm just personally, I'm not into security. And I find that if I know. Sorry
You're
about that.
losing fan points every day.
Yeah. But the thing is, right, I feel that while my books are probably not amazing, that they are quite good because the things that I'm writing about, I'm passionate about. And as soon as I write something that I'm not passionate about, I know that the quality is going to dip. Yeah. So Pushkar wrote the security chapters for me. And I'm very grateful for him to doing that. And he keeps them up to date whenever I ask him. But I do have to rewrite everything that he does because I don't want it to be like the reading experience is jarring for anybody to be like, whoa, these chapters are totally written in a different tone. Yeah. So I've massaged them. That sounds so ridiculous. But so the security chapter is probably my least favorite. I would say now, because I update it every year as well, probably the chapter on pods, just because it's there's not much changes there anymore. So every time I do a rewrite, I literally go through everything. And it's really quite hard work going through a lot of pages about pods because they're not exciting to me anymore. Or well, not that they ever were, but But anyway, yeah, security sends me to sleep. Sorry.
So is the CNCF certification right now the most popular container or Kubernetes related certification, or are there others?
So, yeah, you know what? People ask me this a lot, and I don't have the data behind it, but I have people reaching out to me on the different social channels and things like that. And I do like the CNCF certifications, like the CKAD, the Kubernetes application developer one, certified Kubernetes application developer, and the CKA. I like that path because it's very generic, but I also know that a lot of people like the ones that are aligned to the cloud platforms, like the Google Cloud Associate type exams and things like that. And look, at the end of the day, they're all super helpful to certain people. What I like about the CNCF ones in general, right, and this doesn't apply to the KCNA one that I've written the book for because that's multiple choice questions, but the other ones are hands-on live lab environments. And that's just when I was doing my MCSE for Windows NT 4 years ago, you could blag your way through. I don't know if that translates internationally, but there were techniques to answer multiple choice questions. Like if one was longer than all of the others or short, it was always that one, even if you didn't know the answer. And that kind of took away from the value of the certification. So I feel that when you're ever in a hands-on sort of lab environment for the exam, not only is that fun, I'll just hold my hands up and say playing with stuff like that under exam circumstances is fun, okay, for me at least. So I like them for that kind of a reason, but maybe that's not everybody's cup of tea.
Got it. Yeah. So shifting away from, sorry, go for it, Sanjeev. Go for it.
I was just going to say, so in your Kubernetes book, you've covered containers, security. Do you have a section on how does data management behave in this Kubernetes space? Because the confusion I have is that if you're doing a compute workload, containers come up, containers go down, no problem, you can restart. But when you're doing a data thing, you got persistence and data cannot just vanish.
Yeah. So one of my most exciting chapters, actually, at least for me, because I come from a storage background. No, there is an entire chapter that's on the Kubernetes persistent volume subsystem, which is all about being able to hook in your enterprise grade storage systems. And that can be like your EMCs or your NetApps or IBMs or HPs, whoever, right? Or it can be your cloud storage like GCE persistent disks or Azure files or whatever, right? About plugging that into your Kubernetes environment and exposing those resources along with all their capabilities like replication and snapshotting and high availability and performance into your Kubernetes cluster so that your applications running on the cluster can consume those resources. And the life cycle of the data or of the volume. So if you've got some iSCSI LUNs or whatever that you expose into your Kubernetes cluster as volumes, attach them to containers and pods. when those containers and pods fail or are rescheduled to different nodes and things, the life cycle of the volume is decoupled from the application or from the pod, so that the pod or the node the pod's running on can fail. That pod can get rescheduled somewhere else. You can reattach the same storage. The data lives on. So the book does cover that. It's got a full chapter on it. When I come to do next year's edition for 2023, I'm going to be adding in things like ephemeral volumes and stuff. And I'm going to try and add a bit more of an angle around like sort of the real world application of it, rather than here are some YAML files. This is how you spin it up, spin up an environment, write some random data to it, destroy the pod, and hey, look, the data's still there. That's good, okay? But I want to try and sort of mold that chapter in the next edition of the book to be sort of more real world with more of a full application around it, to demo things like maybe the replication and snapshotting side as well. So cool. Kubernetes as a technology, I would say in the last year, 18 months, maybe even 24 months, like the storage subsystem part of it has really matured. I mean, look, you probably know, computing comes to every game first, VMware first, containers first, then along comes networking, and then coming in right from the, the back of the field, storage gets dragged to the party last. And it's been the same with Kubernetes, right? But I do feel like it is very much here now, to the point where like stateful workloads and persistent data and stuff on Kubernetes isn't like just a niche thing anymore. It's very much, or it feels like it's very much becoming mainstream. Like the technologies are there, but a lot of the conversations I have with people now are saying, oh yeah, we're running like proper persistent workloads on Kubernetes now.
So you stole my next question. So you are seeing just as much stateful versus stateless implementations of Kubernetes?
Not just as much, no. But it's
meaningful percentage?
Yeah, definitely. It's ramping up hugely. I think the technology has been there for a little while. So Kubernetes itself did like a bunch of housekeeping work to take a bunch of like the storage code out of the main Kubernetes code tree and say to like your third-party storage providers, right, you implement the logic, we'll provide you an interface. So there's all kinds of work going on like in the code of Kubernetes to make it less messy and more documented and well-defined for third parties to plug their storage in. That's all done now. And then it was kind of right, okay, the Kubernetes project has done that. Now let's throw the ball over the fence to all of these data management companies and say, time for you to bring your A game to the party. We've built the structure or the framework for you. You come and plug into that, but plug in with all of your full features, all the bells and whistles, right? And that's kind of happened now as well. But it was kind of low level for a while. You would play with YAML files and things, whereas now a lot of the data management companies are bringing sort of higher level tooling to the party that says, we're going to simplify this for you and we're going to make it really a lot easier to do the more advanced things. So you want like 3-site replication and things like that. You don't have to get down into YAML files and stuff so much anymore. We've got a tool where you can look almost point and click, build some policies, and it'll go and do it for you. So look, we're always on a journey, aren't we? It's never perfect.
Yeah.
But I feel like the storage subsystem is on a par with networking in the rest of the world now, and that a lot of enterprise companies and even non-enterprise companies, they're bringing their stateful workloads with them to Kubernetes now.
Because there is a storage, and then there's a layer which, like you said, the data management vendors have to bring in. Because, what if I were doing a transaction in a container and the container went down? Now half my transactions gone through, but the other half has not. So a new container comes up, that data integrity becomes a huge problem. How do you maintain data integrity? Also performance, because I had the cache all warmed up in one container, and now the next container comes up and the cache is empty. So all of a sudden I'm hitting the disk rather than, so my performance takes a hit.
Yeah. And sometimes there are things that you can't get around like that. But I have a general feel that, look, I don't want to name names, okay, but all of the data management companies that live and die by the reputation of their data management platforms and their storage subsystems don't really have any interest in bringing like a second-rate driver or plugin into the Kubernetes world and making like a really bad go of it, because it's not going to do their long-term business any good. So sometimes they'll come to the party with like a restricted set of features while they build on like more of a solid base. So we really saw early on that it was just like you would get storage, and yes, it was RAID protected and what have you on the back end, and it was high performance, but you didn't get a lot of features, or certainly not a lot of those features were exposed via the Kubernetes API, so that it was easy for application developers to come and consume things like replication and snapshotting and cloning and stuff like that. Whereas now that those kind of features are coming to the party, but again, like there are going to be some things that you can't get around. Like I'm picking a silly one here, right? But the old speed of light problem when we're replicating over fiber and things like that. Look, containers are awesome. Kubernetes is good. It's not going to fix that. So yeah.
I have a question about YAML files or something.
Yeah, go
YAML
on.
Files.
Say again?
So you made a comment that kind of made it sound like the YAML files are going to get abstracted away by some of these features in data management. Do you think that's necessary? Because we have a lot of hype for everything is code and love for infrastructure as code. So I wonder if you believe that that's necessary for certain
that's
teams
a brilliant question, right? Because I actually love YAML. Well, I think there's almost two worlds, if you will, right? I feel like the majority of large enterprises, I spent a lot of time in the UK working in banking, retail banking, and some investment banking. And I just get the feel that a lot of those organizations, when it comes to the skill level, and I'm not being disrespectful to anybody here because I spent a good 10 years working at these organizations myself. So if I'm saying the skill level of their engineers isn't great, I'm just having a pop at myself, right? And I'm not. But a lot of these organizations want something that is just really simple for them to consume and have a few patterns that they deploy. And I don't think organizations and teams like that have the appetite to learn all of the YAML and all of the infrastructure as code and stuff like that goes on behind the scenes. Whereas I think a lot of people going forward that are maybe not always at these larger organizations, but at startups and smaller, more nimble organizations that have grown up in the cloud and literally live and die by their applications, then I think they are a lot more into it. Because like you say, Anna, that's where the power is at the end of the day, isn't it? You always lose the edge, I think, when you GUIize or put something in a GUI, whatever, or just a set of scripts or whatever. Yeah, it simplifies it for some people, but you're getting the dumbed down version at the end of the day. So look, I'm waffling as I always do, but I think there's a need for both. Personally, I love the YAML side of things and playing around with that sort of behind the scenes, hacking at the code. But I think there's a market for the higher level tools as well. A little bit like I said about certifications. I'm not a massive fan of certifications, but I know they're very important for a lot of organizations and a lot of people. So yeah, does that address, like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
No, that makes sense. I mean, I hang out very much in the YAML-loving world.
Yeah.
But coming from Gartner, I have a lot of sympathy for people who can't just magic, that knowledge into existence, and they need to get their job done. So if there is some way to easify some of those concepts or constructs, that would be fantastic for them. I just think we're fairly early in that with respect to Kubernetes because it's still very nerdy, I think.
It is.
Yeah, a lot of databases are now, deployed using a Kubernetes operator, and so they come with a YAML file. And I think it's a great way of automation because in the file you can specify how many nodes you want, the type of instance, and you can do all of that in YAML, and then just automate the whole deployment process.
Yeah, totally. And I think just look, like I said, that's where the power is. At the end of the day, it isn't for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and it's not, but it's not for end users. But
No.
if you are, a cloud architect, then you've got to know anyway. You got to be technical anyway, right? So, in fact, a lot of data management vendors, to your point, they provide two ways of installing a database. One, which is using a Kubernetes operator, and the one is directly on bare metal or a virtual machine. And the reason they have the second option is because not every company is going to have Kubernetes skills in-house.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah, Nigel, what do you say to folks? I mean, that kind of there's a question that I often hear is, well, Kubernetes is just a glorified virtual machine, or is a lighter weight virtual machine. What do you say to folks that still don't maybe understand completely the difference between a VM and a container? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would say, because a lot of people think, because I write the books and I do the video courses on stuff like this, that I automatically think that containers and Kubernetes is going to take over the whole world and that's all we're ever going to be working with.
Nothing ever does completely, does it?
No, it doesn't. No. So when I was at my last retail bank, I sat next to the, so I was in the storage strategy team. It was that long ago. I sat next to the guy who was in charge of mainframe strategy. And the amount of money that that bank spent on mainframes and geographically dispersed parallel sysplex, one of my favorite technical terms, right? I have no idea really what it means, but I learned it because I sat next to him. But in our data centers, we still had mainframes powering like core systems.
They probably still do.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll do until the sun turns supernova and the last cockroach on the planet turns over and dies, right? They'll go forever. So I don't think the container is going to take over the world. I would say, right, so let me just, the way that we used to deploy applications to physical servers, along came like virtualization, VMware style, hypervisor virtualization. And we got a bunch of benefits, like we could sweat our corporate assets a lot more. So those servers that were just running one app could run, I don't know, whatever, we'll just say 10 apps, yeah? So we were sweating those assets more, we were saving money, but we were faster to market as well, weren't we? Because we didn't have to wait for procurement, we didn't have to wait for the data center guys to rack and stack the servers, the network guys to plug them in, all of that kind of stuff. So virtual machines came along and they brought a whole load of benefits. Containers came along and they allowed us to get to market faster. So the same way that virtual machines were faster to market than physical servers, containers can be faster to market. They spin up faster. They're more lightweight than virtual machines. So if you've got a physical server that can run, 10 virtual machines with applications, you might be able to run 50 containers with applications on them. Those are just ballpark figures I'm saying right now. So you get a lot of what we got with virtualization, just we get more of that goodness. But also what we don't quite understand, or a lot of us, and I include myself in this, right, sort of struggle to grasp about containers is that it's not just, how we lifted our old apps from physical servers into virtual machines and we didn't change the app and we got a bunch of benefits.
Yep.
To move our apps to containers, we have to kind of rethink the applications and refactor them, so rewrite them in, and look, it's probably too much for us to go into here, but into microservices applications. And when we do that, we get a whole load more benefits as well. So we get everything that we got with virtual machines almost, but more of it. And then if we rewrite our applications so that they can, here's just a dead simple example, right? If you look at an old database system, right, that might have run on a 3-node cluster, right? Huge old, let's just call it an Oracle system, right? I'm not saying that's great or not great, right? But it was so complicated that we only dared ever patch and update it once a year. And if it was ever like end of year or end of month reporting and we needed to scale the reporting system, it was really hard, because if we were going to scale it, we kind of had to scale the entire application and it was really clunky. Whereas now, if we write our applications as microservices applications to run as containers on a Kubernetes cluster, and it is end of year and we need to scale the reporting element of the system, well, look, the reporting element is its own set of containers now. So we can scale that independent of the rest of the application. And then also, if we need to patch, let's say, the reporting system, we don't need to take the authentication system down or the web front end down or anything like that. We can just roll through the different nodes in the reporting system and just update them, again, without touching everything else. So look, I'm waffling, and maybe it's quite technical for just a light-hearted conversation.
I think you have a great point. In fact, I want to give an example. By the way, Eli, your video is hung, so it's stuck. So we can't see your video.
You look all right though, so don't
yeah, you look great.
Much.
Yeah. So I'm not even sure if Eli is listening to us.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm working on it.
Okay, awesome. So here is an interesting example to Nigel's point of how containers are quite a game changer. Many years ago at a KubeCon in San Diego, I attended a session by Harvard University on their deployment. So Harvard has this program called CS50, this class. CS50 is one of the most popular VCU. So CS50 is one of the most popular online introduction to computer science course. It's open to anyone who wants to take it. There are literally over 1 million people who've taken this class. Now, when the exams are getting close, there are literally thousands and thousands of people all over the world who are taking these assignments because there's a midnight deadline. So everyone is writing the assignments and going away, coming back. So you need to store the latest version of their work. So each person is actually in a container, and the containers come up, containers go away. If they had done this on VMs, that there is no way in the world they could have offered a cost-effective, a free program like that, because it would require a whole data center filled with machines. But because they're on containers, they have a much smaller footprint of compute and store, and it's all containerized.
Yeah, 100%.
So we can talk about containers with you all day long, but I have two quick final questions, at least for me. We talked a little bit about data protection and data management. Do you recommend to customers, do you recommend to your students that they get into the habit of backing up at least a container namespace, especially if they're using, stateful or even stateless? Is that, give me a quick answer on that.
Yeah, so it's a tough one. I know you want a quick answer.
You can say it depends. It's the name of the show.
No, yeah, it's okay. So I think the challenge is, right, you have to just get your head around the fact that if you are running containers on Kubernetes, generally speaking, the architecture of your applications is very different to what it used to be. So backing up your data and things like that and replicating it and snapshotting and stuff like that, 100% still go ahead with that. Generally speaking, though, the state of your applications and things hopefully will be stored in a set of configuration files in GitHub or something like that. A version control system. So if in the ideal world, people want to be following things like GitOps practices and things like that, so that it's just a different way of thinking about your entire environment. So I would say, like, your application state and the state of your cluster and things like that, not necessarily backed up with like a backup exec or something like that from back in the day, but have it stored in a GitHub repo and have processes around that, so that what is in your live environment is reflected in the GitHub repo and vice versa, and the two are kept in sync. Your customer data and things like that, you still need to protect that with third-party tools and things as well. And a lot of the data management companies out there have technologies and things that build around that now, because they didn't for a long time, but most of them kind of do now.
Yeah. And the last question from me, I mean, we talked a little bit about, and again, this is maybe another topic for, there's a ton of more questions I want to ask you about portability and a million things, but just this last one, we talked about re-architecting applications as they move into containers, but I'm also seeing a lot of customers that are starting to think about putting COTS or commercial off-the-shelf applications inside of containers. Is that something that you're also seeing? Is that even recommended?
So I know that a lot of application houses are offering their applications as containers to run on Kubernetes. For the most part, I would hope that they are already rewritten and redesigned to work properly with containers and Kubernetes. But I would say that I do recommend people move to Kubernetes in general now. Like, look, let's say 18 months ago when people were asking me, I was saying a lot of the time, look, Kubernetes probably not actually for you, because there's a learning curve and there's investment has to go into it, and you've got to be able to manage it and all that kind of stuff. Then I got to the point where I was saying to more customers, 12 months to 6 months ago, like, you probably want to, if it's not for you, you've got to keep an eye on it because it will be for you soon. Whereas now, pretty much for most people, I'm saying, look,
go for it.
You really should be seriously considering it. And one of the main reasons is that the tools and things in the ecosystem that have grown around Kubernetes and containers, I just feel are far more powerful than tools that we've ever had before. And the writing is on the wall that all of the best tools going forward, from a security perspective, from a monitoring perspective, from just everything, is going to be built around containers and Kubernetes. So if you don't get on board with them right now, you're just going to find yourself with a big piece of catch-up play to do.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Nigel, you're churning out books, because I think you're now a professional at this. But I want to dial back to the first time you wrote your book. How long did it take you, and how easy or difficult was it?
Right. So I'll answer that with two of them. The book that was written for the publisher, I was working 5 days a week in a day job, and I was writing the book on the train on the way to work on the morning. I had an 1.5-hour train journey most days, there and back. So I'd write it on the train on the morning, the train on the way back.
I think we lost Nigel.
I'm not making little of this when I say this. I wouldn't say it nearly cost me my family, but I worked far too much that year. It wasn't good for my health, and it wasn't good for my family. It was very, very hard. But it was worth it when the book was done at the end, okay? Writing independently myself now as a self-publisher. So the KCNA book that I wrote, so I started writing that at the back end of last year, and I think we worked out it took me 8 weeks-ish to write the book. Wow. But that was like morning to night. Yes. And
I think we lost them.
Yeah, but this was great, actually. This is what I wanted to hear from him, because, I've been attempting to write my book, and it's been a slog. But it's good to hear that, it's a common experience.
Yeah. Let me bring him back in. Hang on.
Sorry, guys.
There you go. That's okay. It happens. Technical difficulties.
No worries. Do you know what I was saying when I got cut off?
Yeah, you were saying that the book you just wrote took only 8 weeks, but you wrote it all day.
So, but it was hard work, and we were away on family vacation in Fuerteventura. I had my laptop with me, and I didn't go in the pool once all week, which I'm not saying is healthy. I ate and stuff with my family and things like that. It was hard work, but you have to remember as well that this is an entry-level certification, and I live and breathe Kubernetes, okay? So there wasn't anything that I had to go and research or learn. It was just like, okay, I've got most of this in my head. Let's just get it out onto book. The Kubernetes book's an interesting one, because when I first wrote it, it took me 3 months to write it. And I think the first edition, if I remember right, was 14,000 words long, 14,000. It's now over 76,000 words long. Wow. And I rewrite it I don't rewrite it every year, but I update it every year. And it takes 5 to 6 weeks just to update that one book every year. So we have this kind of plan every year, because my brother works for me now, or works with me now, and handles all the book publishing and stuff like that. The back end of every year, I go to try and update the books, because I'll show you this one here just for example. Quick Start Kubernetes, you can see 2020 edition, right? I don't really want to put 2020 edition, 2022 edition. I don't want to put 2022 edition on the book in October of 2022 because it's out. So I try and get the books out for January, February every year. So it's a lot of work, don't get me wrong. But when I can hold a book in my hands at the end, it's like it's really satisfying. Can I be really cheeky, right? I just want to show you this. This isn't the latest edition. The latest edition is in green. But this is this text here is, if anybody watches Star Trek, that's Borg language. See, Borg edition here. That says the Kubernetes book in Borg text.
Oh, wow.
And the funny thing is, obviously, Kubernetes came out of Google and was based on one of their internal technologies called Borg. And a lot of people that work with technology kind of like Star Trek as well. So we do these limited edition, like that's a hardback Borg edition of the book. And the text inside's written in English, right? But the front cover, it's like
thank God for that, Nigel. I would hope it's written in English.
I know. Yeah, so I've got a Klingon edition and I've got a Borg edition. Yeah, why not, right? So we try and have a little bit of fun when we do them as well, because although the updates that I do every year, they're not like 6-month projects or anything, but it is hard work. And when it's done, to get somebody to do a cover for me that's like a bit of a novelty edition, it just means we can have a little bit of fun with the book as well.
Yeah.
Man, the conversation with you is always fun. It's always entertaining. I think I have like maybe 20 more questions, so we're going to have to bring you back on the show where
don't have enough water.
Talk just Kubernetes next time. And focus more on that. But in the end, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was great. Good luck with the new book. I'm going to make sure I leave all of your contact information in the description. So for anyone watching or listening that want to find the book or find Nigel's information, I'll have it linked in the description below. And Sanjeev, you got anything else you want to say?
Like, good luck with Champions Trophy.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Nigel.
Yeah. Ciao, ciao.